Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Madhusudan Sarma, and today I'm going to teach you the first lecture of Polity, and this is the series of Polity classes which would focus only on mains. So it's like Polity, as you might be knowing, that Polity is common to both mains and prelims, and generally we study Polity from an integrated perspective. We focus on all the topics which are there in prelims as well as mains. But in these classes, we would only be covering the mains specific perspective. Why? Because when we study in integrated fashion, we tend to focus more on the prelims part, and the mains part requires more detailed in-depth understanding. We need to understand various dimensions, and we also need to understand how we are going to create different dimensions in our answers. So the focus of these classes would be on answer writing, how well you can write answers to the polity questions, and also how you can generate different dimensions. So we would study it in a structured fashion, anticipate the kind of question which have been asked and what are the kind of questions that are going to be asked in the UPSC exam, and accordingly the whole polity syllabus would be covered in 18 classes altogether. In between, I will also be covering the art of answer writing in one of the classes, and I will teach you how to frame introduction, how to frame body, how to frame conclusion, how to write headings, how to write subheadings, uh, what are the different dimensions, etc. that it should be written. Before moving forward, just confirm those who are watching it online if audio, video, everything is clear. So my team is suggesting that everything is all right, everything is in place. In case this is going to be an interactive class, in case you have any doubt, you must ask your doubt through the comment section. You must put a comment, and like I believe that all your doubts must be clarified during the live session only. In case you have any doubt left, you can later out also reach out to us, our team, or me through commenting on the videos. Okay, before moving forward, let me give my introduction. I am a graduate of IIT Kharagpur. I graduated in 2012. Thereafter, I have joined NABARD. I worked there as a Group A officer. Then I have been pursuing my career in teaching. I have taught in various institutes. Now currently engaged with Narayana IAS Academy. And in the UPSC journey, I have appeared in UPSC interview thrice. Okay, so now let's come to today's topic. Today's topic is Indian Constitution, historical underpinning, evolution, and preamble. We shall also study preamble. So why we are studying this topic? Because our syllabus mentions something like this. The UPSC mains syllabus mentions that Indian Constitution historical underpinnings, evolution, features, amendments, significant provisions, and basic structure. This is the first topic of polity in our syllabus. Out of this, we are dealing till here. In fact, if you look at our mains syllabus, it does not mention various important items like fundamental rights, DPSP. These are not specifically mentioned, but it mentions something called features. So, features includes all the different part of the constitution. So, all the different parts where questions have been asked, we shall cover in features part. Today, we are going to restrict ourselves in historical underpinning and evolution part, and then we shall start features by looking at the preamble. Okay. Now, the first thing that comes to our mind is that we have been studying that our constitution is a written constitution and it is enacted constitution, not an evolved constitution. Then how come we are going to study the evolution? Would anyone like to answer it? That why are we saying that there is evolution of constitution when our constitution is a written constitution, it's an enacted one? So the answer is simple, that we have to study the evolution of constitution although our constitution is a written one. The reason being that although it was enacted at a particular point of time, what's the difference between written constitution and unwritten? Let's first cover that aspect. What's the difference between written constitution and unwritten constitution? In the written constitution, there is a codified document. It is a codified document. There is one particular document like this, which we call as Indian Constitution. Whereas in unwritten constitution, there are various documents. There are conventions, there are laws. All of them are collectively called as constitution. So there is no one codified document in case of unwritten constitution. What's the example of written and unwritten constitution? Written constitution, I have just given you the example of Indian Constitution. What is the example of unwritten constitution? Anyone? The constitutions of UK and New Zealand are example of unwritten constitution. Then since it is a codified document, it is going to be more systemic, more organized, and also if there is a separate constitution, it is going to be a superior document. So there is a superiority of constitution, whereas in case of unwritten constitution, all laws are part of constitution. Since all laws are part of constitution, we can't say that there is something which is superior to other law. All laws are equally placed. And since there is something superior and there are other laws which are inferior, so other laws have to abide by this superior document called constitution. In that case, there would be a concept of judicial review. The laws which will not be abiding by the constitution can be struck down as unconstitutional. They can be declared null and void, whereas there shall not be anything like judicial review in case of unwritten constitution. So this is the difference. This can be a separate question in itself. What's the difference between written constitution and unwritten constitution? I hope you can answer the questions. Yes, Prasanna, you are right. UK has a unwritten constitution. Very good. Keep replying. It makes the lecture also engaging. I also feel greater joy when I get answers from a student. It feels good. You will also get clarity with at times there are students who have various example in mind and some of them might be right, some of them might be wrong. So when you are in doubt whether it is the right answer or wrong, then you must reply, because then your thought, your example would be validated by me that yes, this is the right example or not a right example. Now let's come to that aspect itself that I was addressing, that how when it is enacted at a particular point of time. Yeah, that was another difference. It is enacted, written constitution is enacted at a point of time, whereas the unwritten constitution is a evolved. Evolved means it grows over a period of time. At some point of time, it has less provisions, some provisions were added. Later on, it evolved. So when we are saying that evolution of Indian Constitution, we are saying that although it was enacted at a particular point of time, various provisions were in continuity. Like before coming to this Indian Constitution, India had constitution, or rather India had certain law which were having the effect similar to that of constitution. So what are the bearings, what are the continuity from those laws? And also constitutions have changed. There are more than 100 amendments till now in our constitution. So it is continuously evolving even in post-independent time. So this evolution we are going to study, although our constitution is a enacted one. Okay. See, the amendments part, which happened in post-independent India or other India after 1950. That part we shall cover when we are studying various aspects, like some amendment will relate to emergency provisions. So when we shall study the emergency provisions, we shall study those amendments. Some will deal with the center-state relation, some will deal with fundamental rights. So whenever we are covering those topics, we are going to cover those amendments. So in today's class, our focus is mostly on the historical underpinning part, that what are the things which are continuing from pre-independent time. Okay. So the first heading under which we study is the borrowings in Indian Constitution. Now borrowing helps us in two ways. The first thing is when we study the historical underpinning, and the second is when we shall be studying the comparison of Indian constitutional scheme with other constitutional scheme. So when we are comparing, we are definitely those things which are borrowing, like if we see US constitution and Indian constitution, the things that we have borrowed from US constitution is naturally the things which are similar, and if in those things we are not, certain things we borrowed from some other country, the chances are that this was not present there. We shall see some examples, it would be more clear. So you tell me, what are the important sources from which our constitution has borrowed heavily? I will wait for your answer. I know that all of you must have studied it whenever you have studied Indian constitution. So please tell me, what are the sources, at least 2-3 sources you tell me, or you can tell if one source from where our constitution borrowed heavily or borrowed the maximum. Please answer. I would suggest you that you always attend the classes using a laptop or desktop, so that you have the keyboard, which is very handy when you have to reply to the chats or when you have to ask a doubt. Anyone? Okay, I will tell you. The three important sources, or rather, if I have to choose the one important source from which the constitution has borrowed the maximum, that is Government of India Act 1935. So before India became independent, this was the act that was governing the country. So naturally, to maintain continuity, a lot of features were borrowed from Government of India Act. In fact, it is said that around 60% of our constitution is continuity of Government of India Act 1935. Yes, so Mansi saying Britain, Prashant is saying USA. Yes, Britain and USA are the other two constitutions from where we have borrowed heavily. So if I have to pick the three sources from where we have borrowed the maximum, that is Government of India Act 1935, Britain and USA. So let's see what all things that we borrowed. So from Government of India Act 1935, the first and foremost important thing that we borrowed is India's federal scheme. And the administrative details, all those things we borrowed from here. We borrowed Supreme Court, we borrowed Public Service Commissions, we borrowed Governor as center's agent also from Government of India Act 1935. But or rather we can say that the office of governor was borrowed from this Government of India Act 1935. Apart from this, the emergency provisions were also borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. Okay. Then from British, we borrowed the parliamentary form of government, the collective responsibility. You can also say that the cabinet system we borrowed from British. rule of law, single citizenship, prerogative rights. What is this prerogative rights? In our constitution, there is only called writs. We do not have prerogative writs. But this both are one and the same. Prerogative writs and writs are same. Why this term prerogative is because initially when the conception of writ came, it was the prerogative of the King of the England. So since it was his prerogative, it was known as prerogative writs. Later on, it was not the king which was exercising this power of writ, rather it was the courts in England which were exercising, and from there we have borrowed and we have given this power of writ to Indian Supreme Court and High Courts. Okay. So in India, only Supreme Courts and High Courts enjoy the power of issuing of writs. What is writ? Writ is simply written order. Okay, writ stands for written order. So the written order that court issues is called writs. Okay. Then in India we have single citizenship. What is single citizenship? Single citizenship is in contradiction to rather what we have in USA. In USA there is a dual citizenship. So a person is a citizen of USA. At the same time the person is also citizen of the states in USA. Whereas in India we all, whether we are staying in Bihar, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh or any state of the India, we all are citizen of India only. There is only one single passport that we carry. Okay. That from USA, what did we borrow? We borrowed the fundamental rights, the impeachment process of the president. This is something that we borrowed, although we shall study it in the comparison of Indian constitutional scheme, that our impeachment process is not exactly same as the impeachment process in USA. In USA, impeachment process starts only in their lower house, whereas in India, it can start in either of the two houses. In lower house, only simple majority is required, whereas in USA, only simple majority is required. In our case, a special majority is required in both the houses. But still, by and large, both the houses engage in the impeachment process. So, by and large, we say that we have borrowed it from USA. But again, it is not exactly same. Then the concept of judicial review, as we have seen that since we have written constitution, there is going to be judicial review. This is something that we borrowed from USA. Next, we shall also see what are the other sources from where we did not heavily borrow, but we did borrow. So let's say it like from Canada Constitution. See, whenever it comes to Canada, always think in your mind that Canada represents the strong center. So similar feature which makes center strong is adopted from Canada, like strong center, residuary power with center, then Supreme Court's advisory jurisdiction, appointment of governor by center. So this is also, I mean, in the chapter of center-state relation, we see that India is a federalism with a strong unitary bias. So those bias, these features we have got from Canada. Okay. Then from French Revolution, like from France, we have adopted some concepts of French Revolution, that is liberty, equality, fraternity and the idea of republic. We shall see today what is the meaning of these terms when we are going to study the preamble. We shall see what is the meaning of these terms. Then from South Africa, we have borrowed elections of Rajya Sabha members. Then from Germany, we have borrowed suspension of fundamental rights during emergency. So the provision related to emergency we borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. But the suspension of fundamental right during emergency is from Germany. So these are small nuances. These are the things which are usually asked in the exam, because examiners also feel that students might miss on these fine details. So here you have to pay attention. Then Japan procedure established by law. Where is it? Can anyone tell me? I am skipping it, you answer it, because there is a time lag between when you answer and when the chat comes to me. So tell me, where is this procedure established by law in our constitution? See, there is a slight presumption in my lectures that you know a little bit of polity. So the lecture, since I am teaching only for mains, it means I presume that at least some prelims level knowledge you have, if not all the knowledge. So I would expect some answers from you time and again. It is Article 21. In Article 21, it is mentioned that no one shall be deprived of his life and liberty except by procedure established by law, and that phrase is borrowed from Japan. Okay. Then from USSR. So USSR was the representative of, yes, Mansi, you are right. So USSR is representative of socialist world, socialism. So all those socialist ideals which are there in our constitution, we can say that it is borrowed from USSR. For example, social justice, fundamental duties, these are the things that we borrowed from USSR. Then from Ireland we borrowed DPSP, and then nomination of members in Rajya Sabha. This is something that we borrowed from Irish constitution. Then from Australia, see, if you have just for the purpose of memorization and remembering the things, you can remember, like in case of Canada, you remember that all those things which gives rise to centralization tendency is borrowed from Canada. Similarly, all those things where something of collective action is there is borrowed from Australia, like interstate trade and commerce shall be free. This is something that we borrowed from Australia. Joint sitting of the two houses. In case there is a deadlock, when Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are not agreeing on something, we can go for joint sitting, and this provision we borrowed from Australia. Then concurrent list. This is something that also we borrowed from Australia. Okay, so all these things are of the nature of where joint action is taken. Concurrent list also, center and a state both can make laws. So that is also coming from Australia. Joint sitting, two houses are sitting together. Interstate trade, two states are allowing trade across each other. So all these things, they are the things which are borrowed from Australia. I am not saying that in our constitution everything where joint action is there is from Australia. So it's like collective responsibility of the government to parliament. This is not borrowed from Australia, it came from England. So just for the memorization purposes, this is something that you can keep in mind. Any doubt at till this stage, please ask. Next, we shall see what kind of questions have been asked. So before I move towards that part, what kind of questions have been asked and what are the questions that we expect in future to be asked. If you have any doubt, please ask your doubts. In the meanwhile, okay, so it seems everything is fine. So UPSC has not been asking a lot many questions from this topic. UPSC has mostly has asked one question, that was about that what are the federal provisions that was continuity or that was borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. So as you can see that UPSC did not ask all the things which were there in Government of India Act 1935. It only asked the federal provisions. So similarly, I expect that if at all in future few questions are going to be asked, it is about some particular theme, like how the federal feature have evolved into Indian Constitution, how parliamentary features have evolved into Indian Constitution. So like in Lakshmikant or in any other book, you must have studied what are the different items which are there in various of the Government of India Act and various acts before that. So here what I am going to teach you today is the theme wise perspective, like how parliamentary form of government has evolved, how federalism has evolved. Okay, so and what, see, I'm not going to teach you anything new, but what you have to do is you have to recollect information that you have studied in some different format to answer it in the way questions are going to be asked. Okay. So first of all, let's look at the features of the Government of India Act 1935. I mean, if we one do the quick recollection, so all the features that you remember, just mention in the comment section. Anything that you remember about Government of India Act 1935. Then obviously I will tell you all the features which were there, important features from the polity perspective, which were there in the Government of India Act 1935. But first you answer. I want at least 4-5 features from you people. Just quickly answer it. Okay, then let's move ahead. The most important aspect of Government of India Act 1935 was that it provided for provincial autonomy. What is meant by provincial autonomy? And how provincial autonomy was there in Government of India Act 1935 and how it was not there earlier. So, provincial autonomy means before this, there was government in the provinces, there were provinces, but the government in the provinces were not having freedom to enact the law or take decisions as per their own wish. So this system, for the first time, what it did, it abolished diarchy from provinces. So in diarchy there was two rules. One, there was an elected government. That elected government could enact certain laws or take action on certain subjects, but not all the subjects at which provinces were empowered to make laws. So that's why we were saying that the provinces did not have autonomy prior to the Government of India Act 1935. Okay. Chaya is asking, well, sir, will this series be free or have to pay something for upcoming classes? No, for all polity classes, there shall not be any charge. Polity classes shall be completely free. Okay. So, because of this, we are saying that provincial autonomy was there. Okay. Then, obviously, if we have provinces with autonomy, we got to have the list of items on which provinces can make law and the list of items on which central government can make law. So there were three lists for the first time by Government of India Act. Okay, it has federal list, provincial list and concurrent list. Federal list, provincial list and concurrent list. Next is, obviously certain item would be falling out of this list, because as the same logic that we give to the residuary power that we have currently. So currently in independent constitution, the residuary power is with the union, whereas in Government of India Act 1935 the residuary power was with Governor General, who was a British nominee. Okay, then now we have a federal kind of system where there are provincial government with provincial autonomy. So the Government of India Act 1935 envisaged for an all India federation. All India federation where the different like provinces as well as princely states, they will come together and form an all India federation. Actually, this federation never came into existence. Actually, it was never formed. Why it was never formed? It was never formed because there was a provision that the federation would come into force only if 50% of the princely estates join it, and 50% of the princely estates never joined it because it was optional for the princely estates, and princely estates have various kind of fear that you will study in the history, because of which reason the All India Federation never came into existence. But yes, the provision was there for making an All India Federation. Yes, Mansi, you are right, as residuary power to the Governor General, not Governor. Governor used to be there in the states, and Governor General used to be there at the India level. So there was Governor General of India or Viceroy of India that used to have the residuary power. Then bicameralism at federal. See, these are the small things that will happen when you reply to the chat. You might be thinking that governor and governor general are one and the same. That's not the case. So if you take care of these small details in your answer, then your answer will also improve. You will get more marks by writing the similar things. You will see that how you are getting 1 or 2 marks more than your friends who are writing the similar points, because the small final detail you are taking care of that your friend might not be, because of lack of awareness. Now bicameralism at federal level. Bicameralism is two houses. Like currently we have Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So this system at federal level, although this system had come into force from Government of India Act 1919 itself, but the same was continued in Government of India Act 1935 also. Next, diarchy at the center. Diarchy was abolished from the states, but it was brought at the center level. So this is something. Diarchy means governance by two power. Two people are governing. So like somewhere, some items were there were certain subjects which were reserved subject. On reserved subjects, the Governor General used to take action, and there were certain subjects which were called as transferred subject. And on transferred subject, the elected government was empowered to take decision or action. So this is called diarchy. Yes, Viceroy and Governor General was same. So whether you write residuary power with Viceroy or residuary power with Governor General, it is one and the same. Then bicameralism in 6 out of 11 provinces. This is also something that came. Now you must have noticed that in independent India also we do not have bicameral structure in all the states. There are only few states where we have bicameral structure. So this is the continuity of the feature which was there in Government of India Act 1935. We do not have bicameral structure currently in all the states. Then reservation to depressed classes, women and labor. Now can you tell me, to depressed classes, women and labor, whether there was joint electorate or separate electorate? Simply reply JE or SE. What kind of system did we have in Government of India Act 1935? I will wait for your reply, but I move forward to the next point. I will come back here. And also there was expansion of franchise. Franchise means like currently we have a simple adult franchise. Everyone who is above the 18 years of age is eligible to vote. But that was not the case earlier. Earlier there were various criteria, like those who had certain property, those who belong to certain families, only they were eligible for voting. So through Government of India Act, 14% of the population became eligible, and this was expansion. Imagine the situation before 1935. Before 1935, women altogether were not having the right to vote. The women got the right to vote only through Government of India Act 1935. Okay. So what was the answer to this? Reservation was in joint electorate or separate electorate? So, like you must have studied in history, there was this system of separate electorate that was there uh, for the Muslims that came through the Morley-Minto reforms in 1909. But when through communal award, the same system of separate electorate was extended to the depressed classes, which we currently know as scheduled caste. Gandhiji was not in favor of it. So Gandhiji went for the hunger strike. Then there was this Pune Pact between Gandhiji and Ambedkar, and through Pune Pact, the system of separate electorate was converted into joint electorate. So for depressed classes, we had joint electorate, but for women and labor, we had the system of separate electorate. For Muslims, Anglo-Indians, Sikh, we all had the same system of separate electorate. So except for the depressed classes, for every other class category, we had system of separate electorate. Is it clear? So these are the different features. Now the question will not be there in general that tell me all the features. The question is definitely going to be some specific. So let's see what kind of question can be asked. But before that, now that we have seen what are the features that have been borrowed, there is one question which is often asked is whether Indian Constitution is a bag of borrowing. Can anyone answer to this question? Is Indian Constitution a bag of borrowing? Good, Satish. And all of you, please like the video and share this information with your friends that these are the free classes which are happening and they should come attend the live classes. If you are busy in the afternoon, you can watch it in recorded format in later on as well. And I want all of you to participate in the class. Give me answers. In 1932, is Indian Constitution a bag of borrowing? Subham is saying yes, definitely. Anyone else with any different opinion? I am waiting for your answer. I think after teaching of these much of things, Irish, Weimar, Soviet, British. Yes, Subham is very much confident that Indian Constitution is a bag of borrowing. More than 60 constitution. Mitra Satish is saying yes, we have borrowed from more than 60 constitution. So definitely it's a bag of borrowing. And since all of you are saying, I would also agree with you. It's a democracy. The teacher has to agree with the student's opinion. So yes, Indian Constitution is a bag of borrowing, but Indian Constitution is not a mere bag of borrowing. Not a mere bag of borrowing. What does it mean? It means that we did not simply mimic any constitution of the world. We should not say that yes, US constitution is going to be Indian constitution from tomorrow onwards. We write it down. One more thing I did not tell you in the beginning of the class. You must also make notes of the things that you study in the class. Even if you are studying it through online, through YouTube or any other medium, it is necessary that because see exams are not tomorrow. The mains that you are going to write is an year away from today. So for that exam, you must revise things multiple times. Because there to write an answer of 150 words, you just get 7 minutes. And in 7 minutes, you have to write at least 10 points from at least 2-3 different dimensions. To write these many points in such a small amount of time, you must memorize it. And to memorize it, the most effective way is multiple revision. So that's why multiple revision is only possible if you have it written somewhere. Because trust me, you are not going to come to my channel and watch these videos again and again. If you do it, I would be more than happy. It will increase my views, etc. But it is not gonna happen. But if you have it written in your notes, you can read it, revise it again and again whenever you are going to have any of your tests. Like you must attend attempt some test, write answer. Whenever you are going to write answer on this topic, you can revise your notes in say half an hour time or so. So Subham Best is saying some offices and institutions like Vice President, Parliament are modeled on constitution of other countries, but they are slightly modified. Yes. So can you give me some example of modification? So first thing is, it was not a mere imitation of any other constitution. It is like we have borrowed features suitable for Indian scenario. So India as a country is distinct from other countries. So those features of other constitution which were found suitable for India, only those features were borrowed. And then first thing that we borrowed the features which were suitable for Indian scenario. For example, we borrowed the parliamentary form of government, not a presidential form of government. Why? Because we wanted the government to be accountable to the people all the time. But at the same time, we borrowed federalism, not a unitary form of government. Because of, we were borrowing the parliamentary form of government from UK, so it would have made a natural sense that borrow the unitary form of government from UK, but we did not do that. Why? Because of the large size of the country. Our country is so big that a unitary form of government was not found suitable. So this is how you can see that only those features which were suitable for the Indian conditions, they were borrowed, not all the features. And the second thing, that suitable modifications were also done. As per Indian situation. For example, let's take the example of fundamental rights. Fundamental rights we borrowed from USA. Now, in the fundamental rights, if you look at the right to equality, let's take the example of right to equality. Right to equality has two provisions: equality before law and equal protection of law. We borrowed equality before law from UK, but equal protection of law is borrowed from USA. So see, in one fundamental right itself, we borrowed provisions from two different constitutions. So this is how our constitution is beautifully modified as per the Indian scenario. And then we also introduced in the same right to equality provision of affirmative action, which was a kind of Indian innovation. Although it was implicit in equal protection of law in USA, we made it explicit in our constitution. Our constitution has specifically mentioned non-discrimination on the basis of caste. Non-discrimination on the basis of caste, which no other constitution has imagined, because caste is a reality, caste is a thing which is peculiar to India. It is not there in USA or UK constitution. So this is how you can say that suitable modification were done. You can see the similar thing in other ways as well, like say bicameralism, we borrowed from like Government of India Act 1935. But the mode of elections in Rajya Sabha, from where did we borrow? That we borrowed from South Africa. Rajya Sabha election we borrowed from South Africa. But nomination in Rajya Sabha, nomination of members in Rajya Sabha, this is something that we borrow from Irish constitution. So we felt that the kind of diversity we have, we also need some nominated members. So this feature we borrowed from Irish constitution. We need to have indirect election in the upper house. So we borrowed it from South Africa. We did not borrow it from the US system. So through these examples or other examples also, you can prove that Indian constitution is a bag of borrowing, but it's not a mere bag of borrowing. And in this context, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar also gave a very good answer in the Constituent Assembly itself. He said that at this point in history means in 1949, when he was answering this question. At this point in history, or rather you can say he was probably referring to this time frame of 1947 to 1949 when Constitution was made. At this point of time in history, it is neither possible not desirable to have a new constitution. You may write it down. The statement of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar that at this point in history, it is neither possible not desirable to have a new constitution. Why it was neither possible not desirable? What he is saying? He is saying that it is neither possible nor desirable. So why he said that it is neither possible? Because till this point of time, the democracy was in existence for approximately 2 centuries or maybe more. Okay, modern democracy we are saying. So modern democracy was in existence for approximately 2 centuries by that time. So in these 2 centuries, a lot of experiment with different form of democracy has already been done. So from where you will get something new when a lot of experiment has already been done with different form of democracy? How are you going to get something new? Whatever you are going to think, someone must have experimented with that in last 200 years. So that's why he said that since democracy was in existence for approximately 2 centuries, it is not possible to have something new. And second, he said that it is not desirable because when someone has already done the experiment, ठीक है, why to do a fresh experiment? No need to experiment. When already US, UK and other countries have done the experiment with different form of democracy, why are we going to have an experiment? Why can't we learn from? No need to experiment, rather we can learn from others' experience. See, when you are preparing for UPSC, either you can start studying, look at the syllabus and start studying a phrase, have an approach of your own, give 1-2 attempts, learn from your mistakes, and then you improve upon that. Or what you can do, you can look at the what toppers are saying, what are the paths that they followed which led to success. So in the very first attempt itself, you can follow the correct path, and then definitely your chances of success is much more, rather than having a random path of your own. Achha, it is not visible. Okay, let me change the color. Let me try with yellow. So I will read it out for you. No need to experiment. And the second point is, why no need to experiment? We need to learn from other experiences. We can learn from other experiences and change it accordingly. Okay, or rather I can change the, oh, all is gone. I was coming to this point that it was not desirable because we can learn from the experiences, good or bad, of other people. Okay, we can learn from the experiences of other countries. And then the third argument that is given is that India at that point of time has a task of nation building. India has a task of nation building. See, after the plunder and exploitation of Britishers for approximately 2 centuries, we were very impoverished country. So this impoverished country has to first bring people out of poverty. So rather than getting engaged in certain political experiment of what kind of constitution we should rather we should have focused on the task of nation building. That's why also Ambedkar said that it was not a good idea to waste time on experimentation. So he said that it's good that we go through various constitutions of the world and adopt the provisions relevant to Indian situations. Is it clear? Good afternoon, Anjali. Probably you got the message late. Is it clear the statement of Ambedkar? So when a question comes that with a comment whether Indian constitution is a bag of borrowing, the first thing you will write that yes, it is a bag of borrowing. You will write example of various sources from which the Government of India Act, USA, UK, South Africa, Canada and other constitution. You will write yes, it is a bag of borrowing, all many things that we have borrowed. Second, you will write it is not a mere bag of borrowing. ठीक है, suitable things have been borrowed and then suitably modified. Then you will say that it was not possible to have a fresh constitution, and then you will say it was not desirable as well. And then in the end, in the conclusion, you can write, so that's why Ambedkar defended this position of having a constitution with a mix of bag of borrowing. These are the different headings through which you can write a very good answer, even an answer of 15 marks or 10 marks. Is it clear? If you have any doubt, you must ask it now. In these classes, since the classes are going to be from the mains perspective, in the other lectures, etc., like I shall be teaching you, if a question comes, what should be the headings, subheadings, points. So this is going to be the structure of the classes. And also polity answers are good if you have some value addition. Like if someone writes that India has borrowed from other constitution and someone gives an example what we have borrowed from Government of India Act, like the Supreme Court we borrowed, the Public Service Commission we borrowed, the federal structure we borrowed. So definitely the person who will give these examples from in case of Government of India Act will give more marks. So throughout the classes, I shall be giving you a lot of examples that must be written, and it's your duty to compile these examples and make a repository of them, so that whenever a question comes, your answer is better than your peer's answer. It's a matter of competition. You have to write something better than your friends or competitors. Clear? So it seems there is no doubt. I will move forward to the next topic. And in next topic, we are going to look at some of the evolution of some of the features of Indian Constitution, like evolution of parliamentary system. Tell me where you can trace the origin of parliamentary system in Indian Constitution. At which act in the past or which point you can say that here I can see that parliamentary system in India was originated. I will wait for your answer. Whatever comes to your mind, please give your answer. No answer. So we trace, see, one thing philosophically that you can see that during ancient times also we have some kind of democratic system or parliamentary kind of system, like we have the system of Sabha, etc. But the modern democracy or the modern form of parliamentary system we trace to Charter Act of 1853. In this Charter Act of 1853, for the first time, 6 legislative councillors were added to the Governor General Council. So it was for the first time it was felt that legislation is a specialist function which is required for this Indian territory of the Britishers. Okay. So these 6 legislators, they used to function like mini parliament. So that's why we say that the origin to parliamentary system in India can be traced to Charter Act of 1853. Now this is something which is different. Like from the theme perspective we are saying, if you simply remember the features of Charter Act of 1853, it is going to be slightly different to think in the exam pressure or in the exam environment what are the how parliamentary system is evolving. So my take is that one parliamentary system, another is the federal system. These are the two topics about which question can be asked by UPSC. So we are going to study the evolution of these two themes. Usually in the books we do not study in this format. Next is Indian Council Act of 1861. In this act, like in 1853, for the first time, legislative councillors were made, something special. But see, all these people in the Governor General Council, they used to be British nominee only. So in this act, it was the provision was made, like if it is democracy or it is the parliamentary system, it's the people who should have their representative making laws for them. It should not be that for Indians, Britishers are making law. So it was felt that okay, some Indians should be nominated to this legislative council. Mind it, not in executive council. Okay, so and here it is nominated, not elected. So again, it was not a true form of democracy per se, and we are not studying evolution of democracy either. We are studying evolution of parliamentary system. But yes, certain amount of Indianization was there through this Indian Council Act of 1861. Then through Indian Council Act of 1892, the element of indirect election was introduced. So first, the element of indirect election was introduced, and although in this Indian Council Act of 1892, the word election was not mentioned. Okay, this did not mention the word election, rather it has the word mentioned nomination made on the, you may write it, nomination made on the recommendation of certain bodies. Nomination made on the recommendation of certain bodies, and these certain bodies were actually local bodies. Okay, so based on the recommendation of the local body, so how these local bodies were recommending it? They were recommending it through election. So that's why we say that an indirect election was introduced through this act of 1892. Is it clear? Then this act also provided the power to discuss budget and ask questions. See, this was a legislative council. So legislative council was as such engaged in lawmaking. It was not engaged in budgeting. or approving the budgets. So for the first time, they discussing the budget, but still budget could not be disapproved by this legislative council. It did not have the power to disapprove the budget. Okay. Then the power to ask certain supplementary questions, etc., with respect to budget was given through this Act of 1909. 1909 Act also increased members. It also provided non-official majority in provinces. Non-official means earlier we have seen that the official people where the government officers were also there in the legislative council. Indirect election, through indirect election also few people were coming. Okay. So now we had through 1909 Act non-official people, like those people who were coming through nomination, the Indians who were nominated, or through indirect election. These people, again not elected, the word is non-official, means nominated. Non-officials means nominated plus indirectly elected. Yogesh is having which were those local bodies. Local bodies, like local bodies we had in Madras also, we had in Bombay also. So there were various local bodies which were constituted. Like you must have studied about Mayor resolution, which had empowered the local bodies. So in the urban areas we had various local bodies. So from these local bodies, which I mean, unlike today, like across India we have urban local bodies and rural local bodies. At that point of time we mostly had urban local bodies, and these urban local bodies were also concentrated in few cities at that point of time only. So from those bodies, indirect representative were elected to legislative councils. Okay. Next, through Government of India Act 1919, we have bicameralism. We have just seen that bicameralism was introduced through. Now here one more thing, like when I give this question to the students, when they trace the evolution in Indian Council Act 1909, they invariably write a lot many other things, like separate electorate was given to the uh, Muslims. In 19 Act they again add the separate electorate was given, and all those things. See, you have to trace the evolution of parliamentary system. So when you are tracing the evolution of parliamentary system, how parliament as a institution or the features of the parliamentary system, like features is that there has to be a representatives, direct election, the powers which are there with the constitution like bicameralism, and their structure. So how these features have evolved, you have to focus on them only. There were various other provisions of the Indian Council Act 1909, 1919 and others also. You do not have to write all those features. Only features which are relevant to a structure, functions, powers of parliament, that is something that you have to write. Okay. Next, like direct election, like election provisions you can write, but federalism related provision and those things you should avoid. Next, Government of India Act 1935, we have already studied that bicameralism in 6 states, this is something that was introduced, and then extended franchise, this is something that was introduced here. Since we have already written how this bicameralism came, although bicameralism was there also, direct election was there also, but you do not have to repeat the points, right? So this understanding you have to see. For writing the same points, you will not get marks twice. So you have to see that how these are evolved. So these features were introduced at different point of time through different acts. If you just mention those features, your answer is perfect. Is there any doubt? Is there any doubt? You may ask, or we shall move to the next thing, that is evolution of federal principle or federalism. Chalo, good your guess. Next is evolution of federalism. So see, when Britishers first came, So this is how it happened. Earlier it was East India Company. East India Company then captured some areas, or the areas which is captured kept on increasing. They thought that now we need some structure to govern it. Then there was intervention by British Parliament. So initially there was a tendency of centralization. British Parliament tried to control this Indian territory. So you can see that from Regulating Act of 1773 till the Act of 1833, there was continuous centralization. And federalism is opposite to centralization. In federalism, there is a decentralization. Today also, no, where we say that the central government is taking all the powers which are there with the states, we say that central government is being anti-federal. Like when CBI is arresting the state government chief ministers, etc., we say that these are the anti-federal move. Okay, so federalism means decentralization. So our tracing of evolution of federalism will start from 1830. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I don't have PPT. You have to write it down. So it will start from 1833, like the Charter Act of 1833. This Charter Act of 1833 said that the Governor General of Bengal would be known as Governor General of India. And this Governor General of India got all the legislative power. In fact, the legislative power of other presidencies, like presidencies of Bengal and Madras, they were taken away and they were given to the Governor General of India. Who was the first Governor General of India? Who was the first Governor General of India? Anyone who has revised history well? So you can say that the legislative power of other presidencies were taken away. See, if you are not able to write something, not able to take note of something, then also you can ask through the comment section. I will repeat that. It's like a regular class only. It's just that you are not paying fee. After this, the major change came in Indian Council Act 1861. Now, till this point of time, the centralization was at its peak. Centralization was complete, or you can say the centralization reached its peak. From Indian Council Act 1861, the decentralization started. You can say the decentralization started. How it started? So first of all, the powers, these powers which were taken away from other presidencies. Yes, Gruvero. What's your real name, Gruvero? So William Weltic was the first Governor General of India. So Indian Council Act of 1861 started the decentralization. So first it restored the legislative power of provinces. Then it also created new legislative council of Punjab and Northwest Frontier Province. It is Northwest Frontier Province. Or at that point of time, it was known as Northwest Province only. Okay, others. Then the major change came in through Government of India Act 1919. Through this Government of India Act 1919, the subjects were classified into central and provincial list. We have just also seen one other feature. Can you tell me? There is one more feature with that we just saw about the Government of India Act 1919. Then we had something called Government of India Act 1935. We have just studied. In this Government of India Act 1935, we had All India Federation. AIF is not All India Financial Institution. It is All India Federation. You may say that, sir, we are worried about AIR, All India Rank. Aren't you? Yes or guess, bicameralism was also introduced. Very good. And then like diarchy was also introduced in provinces. And regarding the Government of India Act 1935, there were a lot many points related to, yes, you are right, others, diarchy at provincial level. Very good. And regarding the Government of India Act 1935, we have just seen a lot many points. Can you just revise once? What are the points that we saw about Government of India Act 1935 with respect to federalism? You do not have to write other points. With respect to federalism, what are the points that we have just seen with respect to Government of India Act 1935? No, diarchy at province. Oh, okay, it's old comment. Tell me. We just saw those points. Like bicameralism was introduced in the states, 6 states. That is a federal feature. Bicameralism was there at the center also. Then we were introduced concurrent list, or first you can say that 3 lists were introduced: federal list, provincial list, and concurrent list. We also had Supreme Court through Government of India Act 1935. Okay. So through this answer, we can write, we can trace the evolution of federalism in India or in Indian Constitution. If it is like 15 marker question, you can also add the aspect what are the federal features which are there in ultimately our Indian Constitution. If it is 10 marker, probably only if you write the pre-independent features, how which features came into through which act, that is going to be sufficient. Okay. Now that's all that we are going to study in historical underpinning. I am anticipating that the first question that is going to come in the future is about evolution of parliamentary provision. Second is about federal features. If once these questions are taken care of by UPSC, we will study other items. Like Reserve Bank etc. is not about federal feature as such. It is about the evolution of monetary policy, evolution of banking. If the question is on that, then you can write. Okay. Next, we are going to look at the one important topic we are going to very briefly deal, that is constitutionalism. What is constitutionalism? We have been uh, using this name constitution very often, time and again. But if I add ISM to constitution, what is it? ISM is not Indian School of Mines. Engineers often recall that. There was this IIT Dhanbad was earlier known as ISM Dhanbad. Okay. So what is constitutionalism? So whenever you add ism, ism means philosophy. Okay. So constitutionalism is like the philosophy of constitution. And what is this philosophy of constitution? The philosophy of constitution is simply in two words, limited government. So if we are going to have a situation, yes, ism means ideology, philosophy, yes. So if we are going to have a situation where there is limited government, we are going to call it constitutionalism. Now you got to simply understand this concept of constitution. Like, why did we need constitution? Why do we need constitution? In prelims, this question has also been asked. Why do we need constitution? What is the core function, the most important function of uh, constitution? And that most important function UPSC has answered is to keep the executive under control. And this is also known as limiting the government, that is constitutionalism. Okay, so just you need not write it down, just understand this. Why do we have constitution? So initially what happened, that as society increased in size, the society, I mean the people were doing as per their whims and fancies, whatever the action they were taking. So it was felt that there has to be some order in the society. We need to follow certain convention. For this purpose, rules were made. And once you make rules, like if someone does not follow, what if someone does not follow those rules? For this purpose, it was felt that there has to be a government to which people will surrender their rights. So every individual had certain right. Every individual has a freedom. He wanted to do things the way he wanted to do. But it was felt that if all of us are acting as per our own will, it is going to be a chaos. It is going to be anarchy. So to bring order in the system, we surrendered some of our rights and made rules that we avoided to follow, all of us. And to implement these rules, it was felt that there is need of a government. There has to be a government to enforce these rules. So we surrendered our powers, our freedom in favor of to the government. Now these governments, since the government got the power to use force against us, since we have surrendered our freedom to the government has got the power to use force against us. The government was more powerful than each of the individual. The government became very powerful. And then it was feared that now this government is going to take away all our freedom. But we did not want that. or the society has not made government to surrender all our freedom. Rather, we wanted to bring an order in the society. Only necessary freedom should be taken away. So that's why it was felt that the government should not be very powerful or should not have unlimited power. Rather, the government should be having only limited power. And from there, the idea came that we should have a constitution which will put limit on the power of the government. And if the constitution, if there is a government which is having a limited power, we call this as constitutionalism. I will also dictate you a proper definition, but in simple terms you can understand that the government, it was felt that the government should not have unlimited power, otherwise it can become dictatorial or it can act contrary to the interest of its subjects. So the government, it is best that the government should have only limited power, and such a system is known as constitutionalism. Okay. Now, if I have to write a definition of constitution, the functions of the government of a state must be in accordance with the provisions of the constitution. Then we can say that there is constitutionalism. When the government is functioning as per the provisions of the constitution, it is called constitutionalism. Okay. In other words, you can say the actions should reflect constitutionality. That is, there should not be any arbitrary action. Arbitrary means which is not logical, which is not as per the rules, which is as per the whims and fancy of a person. Like it used to happen during the like kings, when there used to be kings. The king decided that tomorrow I am going to make something called Taj Mahal. See, I am not against these historical monuments. I am not criticizing them. But see, this is how kings used to function. Tomorrow I am going to change the capital city from Delhi to Daulatabad. King used to do that. They had those powers. So things were not running as per any constitution. Rather, things could go arbitrary. Things were running as per the whims and fancy of the kings. Okay. And the constitution should not only be implemented in letter, rather in a spirit. What is this? What does this mean? Letter and a spirit? See, letter means whatever is the wording which is written in the constitution. And a spirit is what was the purpose of those wording. Like the constitution says that there can be president rule in the states. The central government can impose president rule in the state. So if a president rule is imposed in the state, and it is said that if in the opinion of the president, the constitutional machinery has failed. Now the letter says that if in the opinion of president, whenever you apply the president rule, it would seem that it is constitutional, because see, the president can say that yes, in my opinion, the constitutional machinery has failed. But if there is no cogent reason, that action is arbitrary. The spirit of the constitution was that it should be used sparingly whenever actually the constitutional machinery fails. So, if there is no cogent reason, the spirit of the constitution is not followed. Okay. Now, if a question comes that whether India has constitutionalism or not, how are you going to answer it? So you have to take various examples, and see, today I am not going into those details, because when I am going to study different aspect of constitution, everywhere I am going to answer, let's see, these are the things which are going wrong in our country, these are the things which are going right in our country. So you will take the example. See, your answer is this only. Two aspects you have to see. Where you are saying arbitrary action. All those places where arbitrary action you are seeing. You will start from fundamental right. There are certain arbitrary action, yes. Government is curtailing fundamental right. APSPA is there. Armed Forces Special Power Act. Like our internet is banned time and again for no cogent reason. So there are various examples, like people, there is discrimination against women, the crime is happening. All these things, whatever is going wrong, is violation of constitutionalism. Wherever secularism is violated, that is also against constitutionalism. Wherever democracy is violated, like booth capturing is happening, money and muscle power is there in democracy, there is violation of constitutionalism. So the constitutional principle, whatever we will see throughout our classes, wherever it is followed, we will see that constitutionalism is not followed, because in letter and spirit constitution is not implemented. So our answer is not complete here. You will leave one page of a space here. In future, wherever we are going to study whatever topic, from there you will write 1, 2, 3 points here, and then your answer would be completed. If today I make you jot down all the points, it will not make much of a sense. So this is the work that you have to do yourself, and thus your answer would be different from the other answer. Are you going to do it? Just write me yes if you are going to do it in future as our classes proceed. Good, Yogesh, good. So like Yogesh, all of you should do it. Okay, so until unless you make your own notes, make your own value addition points, your answer is not going to be distinct from others' answer, whatever teacher you may study from. Okay, so leave one page of a space over here, and you keep on adding points as and when we study different aspect of our constitution in future. Okay, good others. Next question that can be asked about constitution is constitution and constitutionalism. Okay, so the doubt that comes is, first question is constitution necessary for constitutionalism? First is constitution necessary for constitutionalism? What do you think? Yogesh, Mansi, have you left the class? Yogesh is saying yes. Okay, see, if we go by the definition that constitution should be implemented letter and spirit, probably you will say that if there is constitution, then only it can be implemented as per letter and spirit. But if we go with the basic philosophy of constitutionalism, that is limited government, we can say that constitution is not necessary. Or rather, the question could be that is written constitution or a codified constitution necessary for constitutionalism? Usually question will be asked written constitution, not constitution. I mean, even if they ask is constitution necessary, what is actually meant is a codified constitution necessary? Okay, so here your answer is going to be that from the basic definition that there should be a limited government, a responsible government, accountable to the people. For constitutionalism to happen, it is not necessary that we have a codified constitution. Even an uncodified or unwritten constitution can ensure constitutionalism. For example, UK. In case of UK, we have, to a large extent, we have constitutionalism over there, but we do not have a written constitution. Okay. Second question comes is that is constitution sufficient to ensure constitutionalism? Is constitution, or rather is constitution necessarily going to ensure constitutionalism? Again, answer is no. There can be constitution. There can be a situation where there is constitution but no constitutionalism. Can you give me some example where there is constitutional? Yes. So Yogesh is giving the example of Pakistan. You can say Pakistan had a constitution, but then there was military rule for a long point of time, and we did not have. There was coup. Or in Bangladesh, you can say the constitution is not being followed. There was a constitution, there was election, elected government was there, but first of all, the problem was that election was not free and fair. There was allegation of rigging in election, and the second thing is that there was coup. The elected government was removed. So these are the examples. Even in history, you can say that even the Germany under Hitler was having a constitution. So first of all, the constitution should have the fair and just provision to limit government. If there is a constitution which does not have enough provision to limit the government, it is not going to ensure constitutionalism. Here you will write the example of Germany under Hitler. It has constitution, but that constitution did not have enough provision to ensure limited government. So Germany under Nazi, under Hitler. And second, you say that the provision may not be implemented in later in a spirit like Bangladesh, Pakistan. So there can be constitution but no constitutionalism, and there can be constitutionalism without written constitution. Okay. So generally there should be a constitution to ensure, but constitution is sort of necessary. I mean, some amount of constitution, whether written or unwritten, is necessary but not a sufficient condition for constitutionalism. Can we say nationalism is required? Nationalism is something different concept. Okay. Nationalism is as such a society rated concept. Nationalism is a more of a psychological concept where we have a feeling of togetherness. All of us, when we have a sense of belongingness, that we belong to a same entity called India, then we say that India is a nation. All the German people, they belong to a same entity called Germany. So it may or may not lead to, there is no direct correlation with constitutionalism and nationalism. Okay. Rather, you can say more related concept is that there has to be a state. A state means there is a government. I mean, we study, there are four things that one entity should have. Any political entity, when it has four things, it becomes a state. It has people, it has territory, it has government, and it has sovereignty. So we are talking constitutionalism only in the context of a state. When there is a state, we are saying that whether there is going to be constitutionalism or not. When there is no state, then this debate of constitutionalism, constitution, all these are infructuous in that context. So when there is a state, when there is a government, when there is a sovereign state, then only we are discussing whether there is a constitutionalism or not in that state. Okay, I guess. And sometimes this state could be nation state, like currently we are in the era where a state has become a nation state. So all the people in a state, they have this feeling of being one, belonging to one particular nation. So a state and nation are becoming synonymous. So states are becoming nation state these days in modern times. Okay. So that's all. Now we shall move to the next topic that we have to cover. Before that, let's take one small thing. What are the provisions that are there in Indian Constitution to ensure constitutionalism? This is also a question that can be asked, that what are the provisions in our Indian Constitution? So, see, as such, the whole of the Constitution does this purpose. Whole of the Constitution puts one limit or another on the way government would be formed, on the power of the government. Okay, so you take the name of any part of any provision of the Constitution, that is the that provision is going to ensure constitutionalism. Give me some example. See, the important thing, if this question is asked, what are the provision in Indian Constitution that will ensure constitutionalism, your answer is yes. So you will write anything in our Constitution, that would be the correct point. The matter which will fetch you more marks is when you write that two line of explanation, that how it is putting limit on the government. So you with every point you have to write the two line of explanation. For example, when I am writing fundamental right, so fundamental right, you have to add that these are negative obligation on state. It restricts the power of a state. So fundamental rights are probably the most potent tool in terms of putting limit on the government. Okay. Then the provisions which relate to the provisions which ensures that there is going to be parliamentary form of government, the government is going to be answerable to the parliament, that is again putting restrictions on the government. The provision which establishes constitutional bodies like election commission, uh, CAG, it is also putting limit on the power of the government. The provisions of judicial review, it is also putting power on the government, limit on the power of the government. Okay, even like things like preamble. Preamble says that Indian Constitution has to be sovereign, socialist, democratic republic. So the kind of government that can be, who can be, I mean, if it is republic, we will see the meaning of all these words. Okay, it is a putting a limit on the government. And you can also write the explanation that preamble has been declared an integral part of Constitution, and it helps in interpretation of the other parts of Constitution. In which judgment it was said? See, in polity you also have to memorize various judgments. So the preamble is an integral part of Constitution was said by Keshavananda Bharati judgment. Judicial review, we have just in rule of law, separation of power, checks and balances. Separation of power, the whole purpose of separation of power is to put the limit on the government. We shall see these things also. Separation of power is a separate topic. We shall see separation of power. As of now, you just have an idea what is separation of power or not. If you have just an idea what separation of power is, we are not going to spend time here, because separately a different aspect of separation of power we are going to deal in some other topic. There is a dedicated one day class would be dedicated to separation of power only. Then checks and balances. So the examples of separation of power, checks and balances, all these things we are going to see in those topics. Okay. So here also you can leave some space, as and when we are going to cover different topic, you will have to complete this topic, that these are the provisions how government is being put under control. Is it clear? Would you be able to write those points? Please reply. If you can't, then I will tell you. So see, all these pages that I am asking that you must fill later on, you keep a track. Maybe at the end of your copy, you should note it down that these are the pages that you have to fill. By the time we near the completion of our subject, then you see that whether you are able to fill or not. If you are not, again you raise the question in the class, so sir, here I am having the difficulty. I will help you in completing the answers. Okay. Currently, I want you to do some homework. Today also, I mean, if you have already studied various topics, you can try filling these pages. If today you are able to fill, there is nothing better than that. But if by the end of the classes you are able to fill it, that's also well done. Now the next and the last topic of our today's class that I am going to deal is preamble. How many of you remember the preamble? Completely, verbatim. Either yes or no, please answer. If you remember the preamble, please answer yes. You may answer partially, you may answer no. Do you remember the preamble? Yes, but in Marathi. Okay. Uh, See, in Marathi, actually, prelims exam does not happen. So you have to remember it in English. Because at least in prelims, various keywords of preamble have been asked time and again. Chalo, let's see. This is our preamble. Just have a look once. We, the people of India. So there are various aspects. First, it says the source of the power of constitution. That is, we, the people of India. Then it says the kind of nation we are going to create. We are constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. We will understand the meaning of each of these terms. And to secure its citizens, what's the purpose of this constitution? The purpose is to secure justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. And then in the end, it says that this 26th day of November 1949. So this was the day on which our constitution was ready. It was prepared. Okay. Do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this constitution. So it is often asked in prelims that when was our constitution enacted? Then the date is 26th November 1949. When did our constitution come into force? That is 26th January 1950. Okay. So now the question, if it is going to ask, it is going to be asked about these features and keywords of the preamble. So first of all, it says about the nature of the state: sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic. Let's, and then it mentions about the objective: liberty, equality, fraternity. We are going to study all these terms one after another. So first, let's see nature of the state. First point is, it is going to be a sovereign state. What is the meaning of sovereign? All of you, please like the video. If you watch the video, it's your duty, fundamental duty rather, to like the video of the polity teacher. So what is going to be the nature of the state? First is sovereign. What does it mean? Sovereign means not self-sufficient, you guys. Self-sufficient means Atmanirbhar in Hindi, that you call, that I have all the things that I need. Sovereign means, and see, no country is self-sufficient as of now, but we cannot say that the countries are not sovereign. So sovereign as such means that there should not be any external control, having self-ownership. Okay, so sovereign means there has to be a supreme authority. There is no external control. Sovereignty means there is no external control. So whether it is an internal matter affairs or external affair, if a country is taking its own decisions, it is having the power, then we say that that country is sovereign. Okay. It should have the power to acquire a territory or cede a territory. Cede means give the territory to some other country, to some other nation. Then we call it sovereign. Now, if you have to give answer whether India is sovereign or not, you will always give answer as yes, India is sovereign. India has sovereignty. Like you can give an example when there is a war between Russia and Ukraine, we maintained our neutral stance. We did not say that since we have a long lasting relationship with Russia or other under pressure of Russia, we did not side by Russia, or under the pressure of other Western country, we did not go against Russia. We maintained our neutral or our own distinct stance. This is sovereignty. We say that the Kashmir is our internal matter. No other country can dictate us what stand to take on Kashmir. This is the meaning of sovereignty. Now, in this context, there are two questions that are asked. One question that is asked is, when India became member of Commonwealth, did India lose its sovereignty? And the second question that is asked is that when we are joining various multilateral institutions, are we losing our sovereignty? So Yogesh is saying that when we are joining the multilateral okay, so first is about when we are joining the Commonwealth group. Yogesh is saying that we did not lose our sovereignty. Yes, because I have told you, your answer is yes, India is a sovereign and India has joined Commonwealth. Still India is sovereign. It means we did not lose our sovereignty. Then you will have to only merely writing yes and no is not going to be the answer. You have to write the points that how we have maintained our sovereignty despite joining Commonwealth. Because what is Commonwealth? It is the grouping of all the country which were the colony of British. So when you have joined a grouping where all the countries are there who are slave, who were earlier the colonies of a British territory, then naturally the question comes that obviously the Britisher would be supreme in this group. Britishers are the one who are organizing this Commonwealth. But we say that we have maintained our sovereignty because we have joined it through our own will. It was voluntary. It was not a compulsion for us to join Commonwealth. Okay, and the next part is that did we maintain our autonomy or not? So the second point is that India, despite joining Commonwealth, has autonomy in its internal as well as external affair. It's not that we have to follow the dictate of United Kingdom or any such organization. The third point you can write is that anyway, the monarch in England has only symbolic value today. There is symbolic monarchy in England. That monarch itself has lost its value. So there is no, as such, India itself is a supreme authority. The supreme authority has not gone to monarch. And the third point that you can write is that India has declared itself as republic. Republic means elected head of a state. So it's not like earlier in the British time, the head of state for India was also the British monarch. But that's not the case today. Today, the Indian head of a state is Indian president. And then we can say that there is no legal and political compulsion. It's not that the law made by England is applicable on India. So there is no legal or political compulsion that has been imposed on India due to India joining the Commonwealth. So that's why we can say that even after joining the Commonwealth, India has not lost its sovereignty. Clear? You would be able to write points. In actual exam, these are the headings. You must explain all of these points, right? Then it would fill one page. 5 points are going to be sufficient. The next question that they are going to ask is whether joining of multilateral institutions, when we are joining various multilateral institutions, global institutions, does it impact India's sovereignty or any other country's sovereignty? Or rather, the question can also comes in this format, that multilateral institutions are compromising the sovereignty of nation state. I mean, the question may not come specific to India. Rather, it could be like in general, whether nation states are losing their sovereignty because of the proliferation of multilateral institutions. This answer is to some extent yes. It is true to some extent. See, all these questions, whether this has happened or not, is something like this. Completely sovereign is here and completely losing sovereignty is here. There is always a spectrum, a line which goes from 0 to 1, and the actual situation will lie somewhere in between. Yes, we have lost some sovereignty, or other various countries do lose some amount of sovereignty, but they remain sovereign as well. The answer is going to be in this format. So we shall write why there is argument that there is loss of sovereignty due to proliferation of these multilateral institutions. See, exact no is not the answer, Yogesh and others. That's what I am teaching you. That its answer is not exact no, that there is no impact. Word is impact. Okay, so we will not say that there is no impact, but again our conclusion would be there is some impact. I will tell you the conclusion also, but we do not lose sovereignty. Okay, it's not that we have lost sovereignty, but yes, there is some impact on sovereignty because of the proliferation. Why is there some impact? Because see, these institutions do make laws which are binding in nature, which are binding on the government, and then government have to modify its own laws, its own policies as per the laws of the institution. Or in the very first instance itself, when a country joins a multilateral institution, it decides that it will abide by its rules, laws, etc. Right? So it agree to certain rules, norms and commitments. For example, if you join WTO, you have to abide by the charter of the WTO. You can write its example. Or even if you join United Nations, you have to abide by the UN charter. So if you join any organization, you have to abide by the rules of that organization. Some legal obligations will come. So if you are abiding by some external legal obligation, it is definitely loss of your sovereignty. You means some nation state. Then there are certain policies or the laws that are made by these obligations which become binding. For example, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Whoever signs this UNFCCC, it becomes binding on that country. Or like if you have agreed by WTO, there is limit on subsidies that the India can give or any other country can give, limit on subsidies. So there are other laws and policy obligations which are on you. Then the global governance norms are being set by these institutions. Globally, they are setting that yes, every country is going to take action to mitigate climate change. Now you have the reserve of coal, but you cannot use coal because you have to mitigate climate change. So your policies are being framed by some external agencies. There is global governance. All the countries are following those policies. So, and you also lose the policy of flexibility. Can you give some example? How you lose policy flexibility? Like add conditionality of IMF. It says that you have to reduce the government loan, fiscal deficit you have to reduce. You have to reduce expenditure. You can do this, you cannot do that. A lot of conditionalities are there. You have to open up your economy. You have to reduce taxes. You have to reduce custom duty. You have to allow FDI. And then there is also a concept of shared sovereignty. It's the EU is its perfect example. European Union. Various countries of Europe have come together. They have surrendered their sovereignty to the European Union, and European Union has a parliament. It makes the laws which are binding on all the countries of the Europe. Okay, so that's why they have developed something shared sovereignty. So their individual sovereignty is lost or compromised. And then these multilateral institutions are also forcing or compromising on sovereignty through their soft power. Like all these institutions are collectively recommending democracy, human right, capitalist form of economy. They are publishing reports which is criticizing those countries which are not maintaining transparency, which are not maintaining human right records. So in a way, through their soft power and normating influence also, they are forcing the countries to have particular kind of law, have particular kind of policy, have particular form of government. Again, this is loss of something. I'm not saying that these institutions are doing bad. See, this is the thing in polity. When I'm answering whether these institutions are impacting multilateral sovereignty, you may see that I am painting these institutions in bad light. Yes, I am doing that because I am today discussing sovereignty. But in toto, I am not discussing whether these institutions are bad. Obviously, human rights should be followed by all the country. If certain country is not following it, is not doing the right thing. But whether in this process sovereignty is compromised, yes. So you should make only that conclusion which is being made in that class. You should not make too many conclusions from one particular statement. I hope this kind of maturity you will show, right? So these are the points with example. Again, with all the points you must write example and different one. If you write these points but not example, you will not get the desired number of marks. Now the next aspect that we shall go, the counter argument, that whether we will not say that sovereignty is lost completely. Okay, so what is going to be our counter argument? The counter argument is going to be, first thing is that all these countries join these institutions out of their own free will. It is not binding on the countries to join WTO or United Nations or for that matter any convention. They join on their free will. The World Bank is also not mandatory. IMF is also not mandatory. Okay. The first is it is voluntary. Since they are joining at their own will, they are maintaining their sovereignty. And also they can quit. If at any point of time in future they realize that their sovereignty is compromised, they are losing their flexibility, they can quit. For example, Brexit. When Britain realized that it is not in its interest to be the part of European Union, it exited European Union. So, because of these institutions, sovereignty cannot be compromised. And then the third thing is that it is a balance. It is a balancing act when you are joining any institution between benefits and constraint. So these countries, all the countries are joining this institution for certain benefits, and in this process of getting benefits there are certain constraints that they are facing. So this is a balancing act. This is not a loss of sovereignty. You are losing something. You are losing a part of your sovereignty to gain something. For example, you can take the IMF. Like if Pakistan doesn't get a loan or Sri Lanka does not get a loan from IMF, the country would be in shambles. The country might disintegrate. What will they do with that sovereignty? Okay, so you can write the example of Pakistan and Sri Lanka. To get IMF loan, they decided on in their own interest that they need to adopt this conditionality so that their country could survive. Okay. Take a note of it. And invariably, like these multilateral institutions also have certain opt-out clauses and exemptions. Like in WTO, there is exemptions for developing country. Developing countries like India can breach the limit allowed for the agriculture subsidy. So there are certain clauses and exemptions which are always available for the multilateral institutions which countries can exercise out of their own free will. So through which we can, yes, common but differentiated responsibility, that is also there. Very good, your guess. So based on these we can say that obviously in theoretical terms there is some loss of sovereignty, but practically this is being done on their own free will. So this is another example of exercise of sovereignty by various states. When a state is joining any multilateral institution, it is another example of exercise of its sovereignty only. There is never a complete loss of sovereignty. Through this, you will write the conclusion. Is it clear? So today's class, I'm going to stop here only, although I had the plan to cover some of the other topics, but our time is already over. Our classes would be having the duration of 2 hours only. So we shall see again, and the classes will happen from Monday to Friday. So our next class is going to be on Monday. We will start from here only. We will start from preamble and then we shall start some aspect of fundamental right. Fundamental right we shall devote 2 lectures. So some aspect of fundamental right would be in the next class. Some other aspect would be on the next to next class. If you have any suggestions, any feedback, you can mention in the chat right now or you can mention in the comment section. If you want something more, something different, you can mention there. You can follow me on my Telegram channel, Madhusudan_IIT. It has the heading like I also teach economy and CSET, so economy, polity and CSET by Madhusudan sir. That's the name of my Telegram channel. You can follow the Telegram channel of Narayana IAS Academy as well. There you will get various content of various other examination, daily quiz, etc. also. And you must subscribe to the YouTube channel. Okay, see you again on Monday. तब तक के लिए goodbye, take care.